The door creaked open, and my heart stopped. Ethan's lips were inches from mine, his breath warm against my skin, when the shadow of my stepdad, Tom, loomed in the doorway. In that split second, the world I'd carefully built walls of lies and half-truths crumbled. I'm Jake, 19, living in a quiet suburb of Portland, Oregon, where picket fences hide secrets better than they guard yards. Ethan, my best friend since sophomore year, was the only one who knew the real me, who loved him in ways I couldn't say out loud. We'd been sneaking moments like this for months. Stolen kisses in my room when Mom and Tom were out, always with one ear on the stairs, waiting for the sound of footsteps that could ruin everything. That night, the air was thick with summer heat, the kind that makes you reckless. Ethan had come over to study, our usual excuse, though the textbooks on my desk hadn't been touched in hours. We were laughing, whispering, our hands brushing in that electric way that made my chest ache. I didn't hear the car pull into the driveway. I didn't hear the front door. But I heard the creak of my bedroom door, and I saw Tom's face, his eyes wide, then narrowing, his jaw tightening like a vice. "Jake," he said, his voice low. "Dangerous. What the hell is this?" Ethan pulled back, his face pale, his hands trembling as he stood. I wanted to scream, to explain, but my throat was dry, my words trapped. Tom's gaze flicked between us, and I saw something shift in him, anger. Yes, but something deeper, something I couldn't name. He didn't yell. He didn't hit me. Instead, he did something worse. He turned and walked out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan grabbed his backpack, muttering apologies, his eyes avoiding mine. "I should go," he said, and before I could stop him, he was gone, leaving me alone with the echo of that slam. I sat on my bed, staring at the closed door, my heart pounding. What would Tom do? Would he tell Mom? Would he kick me out? The questions swirled, each one heavier than the last. I'd always known I was different. Growing up, I'd watch other guys talk about girls, their voices loud with confidence, while I faked it, nodding along, pretending. Ethan changed that. He saw me, really saw me, in a way no one else ever had. We'd met in chemistry class, bonded over a shared hatred of balancing equations, and soon we were inseparable. Late-night talks turned into something more, something neither of us could deny, though we never dared name it. Not until tonight. Now, with Tom's reaction burning in my mind, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. My stepdad wasn't the warm, fuzzy type. He was a contractor, all rough edges and calloused hands, the kind of guy who valued normal above all else. Mom married him 2 years ago, after Dad left, and while he'd never been cruel, he'd never been close either. He was just there, a constant presence, watching, judging. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made me jump, expecting Tom to barge back in. By morning, my eyes were gritty, my stomach a knot. I heard Mom in the kitchen, humming as she made coffee, oblivious. Tom was already gone, his truck missing from the driveway. I didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified. At school, Ethan avoided me. He sat across the cafeteria, his head down, his usual smile gone. I wanted to run to him, to fix this, but fear kept me rooted. What if someone saw? What if Tom had already told someone? The whispers in my head were louder than the chatter around me. By lunch, I couldn't take it anymore. I found Ethan behind the gym, where we'd sometimes hide to talk. "We need to figure this out," I said, my voice shaking. He looked at me, his dark eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before: fear. Yes, but also resolve. "Jake, what if he tells everyone?" He asked. My parents. They'd kill me. I wanted to promise it would be okay, but I couldn't. Because I didn't know. All I knew was that Tom's reaction wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something bigger. Something that would change everything. That night, I came home to find Tom sitting at the kitchen table, a beer in his hand, his eyes fixed on me. Mom was at her book club, leaving us alone. He didn't speak at first, just stared, and I felt like a bug under a magnifying glass. Finally, he leaned forward, his voice steady but cold. We need to talk, Jake, he said. About what I saw. My stomach dropped. I braced myself for the worst, but what he said next wasn't what I expected. Not at all. I'm not going to tell your mom, Tom said, his voice low, like he was measuring every word. Not yet. But you need to understand something, Jake. This thing you're doing, it's not right. His words hit like a punch, but it was the not yet that scared me most. It hung in the air, a threat wrapped in calm. I stood frozen in the kitchen, my hands gripping the counter behind me, trying to keep my voice steady. What do you mean? Not right? I asked, though I knew exactly what he meant. I'd heard it before in locker room jokes, in the way some kids at school sneered at anyone who didn't fit their mold. But hearing it from Tom, in my own house, made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. He took a long sip of his beer, his eyes never leaving mine. You're young. You're confused. I get it. But you can't just do that. Not here. Not under my roof. I wanted to scream that I wasn't confused, that loving Ethan was the clearest thing in my life. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just stared back, my chest tight, my mind racing. What was he going to do? Kick me out? Send me to some camp to fix me? I'd heard stories, whispers about kids who disappeared for months, coming back hollow. I'm not confused, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. I know who I am. Tom's jaw clenched, and for a moment, I thought he might stand up, might grab me. But he just leaned back, his chair creaking. You think you know? He said. But you're 19. You don't know shit about the world. You think this is some fairy tale. It's not. People out there, they'll eat you alive for this. His words stung, not because they were new, but because they echoed every fear I'd ever had. Growing up in Portland, I'd seen the pride flags, the rainbow stickers on coffee shop windows, but I'd also seen the looks, the muttered slurs, the way some people's smiles turned sharp when they thought no one was watching. Tom wasn't wrong about the world, but he was wrong about me. I'm not asking for your permission, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. This is my life. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. Your life? Kid, you live in my house. You eat my food. You don't get to make the rules. The air between us crackled with tension. I wanted to run, to find Ethan, to hide somewhere safe. But there was no safe place. Not anymore. Tom had seen us, and that changed everything. The next day at school, Ethan was still distant. I caught him in the hallway, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his eyes darting away from mine. We need to talk, I said, keeping my voice low. The hallway was crowded, kids shoving past, but it felt like we were alone in a bubble of fear. I can't, he said, his voice tight. My dad, if he finds out. Jake, I'm done. He's not like Tom. He won't just talk. I grabbed his arm, not caring who saw. Ethan, we can't just pretend this didn't happen. Tom knows. He's not telling Mom yet, but I don't know what he's planning. Ethan's face paled, and for a moment, I thought he might bolt, but he nodded, his jaw tight. Okay. After school. The park. The park was our place. A quiet spot by the river where we'd spend hours talking, dreaming, kissing when no one was around. That afternoon, we sat on a bench, the water glinting in the late summer sun. Ethan looked smaller somehow, his shoulders hunched, his hands fidgeting. I'm scared, Jake, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I love you, but what if this ruins everything? I reached for his hand, but he pulled away, glancing around like someone might be watching. My heart sank. I'd always known Ethan's family was stricter than mine. His dad was a pastor, his mom a teacher who quoted scripture at parent-teacher conferences. But hearing him say it out loud, seeing the fear in his eyes, made it real. We'll figure it out, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. We have to. That night, I came home to find Tom waiting again, this time in the living room. Mom was still out, her shift at the hospital running late. He didn't look at me as I walked in, just kept his eyes on the TV, some football game blaring. Sit down, he said, not a request. I sat, my stomach churning. He turned off the TV, the sudden silence heavy. I've been thinking, he said. About you. About this situation. I braced myself, expecting another lecture, but his next words threw me. I'm giving you a choice, he said. You can stop this. End it with that boy. Or you can leave. Leave. The word hit like a brick, cold and final. Tom's eyes were steady, unyielding, as if he'd already decided my fate and was just waiting for me to catch up. You're kicking me out? I asked, my voice cracking despite my effort to sound strong. I was 19, barely out of high school, with no job, no money, no place to go. The idea of leaving home, leaving mom felt like a betrayal of everything I'd ever known. Tom leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped tight. I'm not kicking you out, Jake. I'm giving you a chance to fix this. You stop seeing that boy. You stay. You keep going down this road. I can't have it in my house. His house. Not ours. Not mine. The distinction stung. A reminder that I was an outsider here, even after 2 years of calling him stepdad. I thought of Mom, her tired smile after long shifts, the way she'd hug me and say I was her whole world. What would she think if she knew? Would she take Tom's side? I can't just stop being who I am, I said, my voice shaking. You don't get it, Tom. This isn't something I can turn off. He stood, towering over me, his face a mix of frustration and something else bitty. Maybe. I'm trying to protect you, he said. You think the world's gonna accept you. You think it's all rainbows and parades out there. You're gonna get hurt, Jake. I'm trying to save you from that. I wanted to laugh, to scream that he was the one hurting me, but all I could do was sit there, my hands clenched into fists. He didn't wait for a response. He just walked out, leaving me with the weight of his ultimatum. The next few days were a blur. Ethan and I met in secret, stealing moments in the park or behind the school, but it wasn't the same. Every touch felt like a risk, every glance a potential disaster. Ethan was pulling away, his fear growing stronger than his feelings for me. I could see it in the way he avoided my eyes, the way his texts got shorter, colder. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I snuck out and rode my bike to Ethan's house, hiding in the shadows across the street. His bedroom light was on, and I could see him pacing, his phone pressed to his ear. I texted him, begging him to come outside, but he didn't respond. I waited for an hour, my heart sinking with every minute, until the light went out and I knew he wasn't coming. Back home, things got worse. Tom watched me like a hawk, his silence louder than any lecture. Mom noticed the tension but didn't push, assuming it was just teenage moodiness. I wanted to tell her everything, to spill the truth and let her hold me like she did when I was a kid. But fear kept me quiet. What if she agreed with Tom? What if she looked at me the way he did? At school, rumors started. Someone had seen us at the park, holding hands for a split second before Ethan pulled away. Whispers followed me in the halls, eyes lingering too long. Ethan stopped showing up to classes we shared, and when I finally cornered him, he looked like he hadn't slept in days. My dad knows, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Someone told him. He wants me to go to this program. Some church thing. To fix me. The word fix made my stomach turn. I'd read about those programs, conversion camps. They called them, though they dressed it up with words like therapy and guidance. I grabbed his hand, not caring who saw. You don't need fixing, I said. You're perfect. He pulled away, tears in his eyes. I can't do this, Jake. I'm sorry. He walked away, and I felt like the ground was collapsing beneath me. I wanted to chase him, to scream that we could run away together, but I knew it was a fantasy. We were kids, trapped in a world that didn't want us to be us. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't stay in Tom's house, living under his rules, pretending to be someone I wasn't. I started packing a bag, clothes, my laptop, the little cash I'd saved from birthdays. I didn't know where I'd go, but I knew I couldn't stay. As I zipped up the bag, I heard a knock. Mom stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes searching mine. Jake, she said softly. What's going on? Mom's voice was gentle, but it carried a weight that made my chest tighten. She stepped into my room, her eyes flicking to the half-packed bag on my bed. Jake, talk to me, she said, sitting on the edge of my mattress, her hands folded like she was bracing for bad news. I wanted to lie, to say it was nothing, but the truth was clawing its way out. I sat across from her, my hands shaking, and took a deep breath. Mom, I'm gay, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. And Tom saw me with Ethan. He told me to stop or leave. Her face froze, her eyes widening, but she didn't speak. The silence was worse than anything Tom had said, worse than the rumors at school. I waited, my heart pounding, for her to say something, anything. Finally, she reached for my hand, her touch warm but trembling. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice breaking. Jake, I'm your mom. You could have told me. Tears stung my eyes. I was scared, I admitted. I thought you'd hate me. She pulled me into a hug, her arms tight around me, and I felt like a kid again, safe for the first time in days. I could never hate you, she whispered. You're my son. I love you, no matter what. But then she pulled back, her face serious. Tom, he told me something was going on, but he didn't say what. He said you were in trouble, that you needed help. I didn't understand. He wants me to change, I said, bitterness creeping into my voice. He thinks I'm broken. Mom's jaw tightened, a flash of anger in her eyes I'd never seen before. You're not broken, she said firmly. But Jake, this is serious. Tom's, he said in his ways. I need to talk to him. I nodded, but dread settled in my stomach. Mom might love me, but Tom held the power in this house. And Ethan was slipping away, caught in his own family's grip. I felt like I was fighting a war on two fronts, and I was losing both. The next day, I went to the park, hoping Ethan would show up. He didn't. Instead, I got a text. I'm leaving tomorrow. Dad's sending me to the program. I'm sorry, Jake. My heart shattered. I called him over and over, but he didn't answer. I rode my bike to his house again, but the lights were off, the driveway empty. He was already gone. Back home, I heard raised voices from the kitchen, Mom and Tom, arguing. I crept closer, catching fragments. He's my son, Tom. Mom shouted. You don't get to decide who he loves. He's throwing his life away. Tom shot back. You think this is easy for me? I'm trying to keep this family together. I couldn't listen anymore. I grabbed my bag and slipped out the back door, my bike carrying me into the night. I didn't know where I was going, just that I needed to move, to escape the weight of it all. I ended up at the park, sitting by the river, the water black and endless under the stars. I thought about Ethan, about the program he'd been sent to. I'd looked it up online, stories of kids locked away, told they were wrong, broken, sinful. The thought of Ethan, with his quiet smile and gentle hands, going through that made me sick. I wanted to save him, but I didn't know how. Hours later, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. Come home, Jake. Please. We'll figure this out. I wanted to believe her, but Tom's words echoed in my head. End it or leave. I couldn't end it. Ethan was part of me, and losing him felt like losing myself. When I got home, Mom was waiting alone. Tom was gone, his truck missing again. He's staying at a motel tonight, she said, her voice tired but firm. I told him he needs to think about what he's saying, about what he's doing to you. I didn't know what to say. Part of me was relieved, but part of me knew this wasn't over. Tom wouldn't back down, and Ethan was still gone. I hugged Mom, clinging to her like a lifeline, but my mind was already racing, planning. I had to find Ethan. I had to bring him back. The next morning, I woke with a fire in my chest. Ethan was out there, trapped in some program meant to break him, and I couldn't just sit here. Mom was already at work, leaving me alone in a house that felt too quiet, too empty. I opened my laptop and started searching, digging through forums and websites for anything about the program Ethan's dad had mentioned. It didn't take long to find a place called New Horizons, a faith-based youth retreat in rural Washington. The reviews were vague, polished, but the comments on obscure message boards told a different story: isolation, shame, kids coming back changed, hollow. I had to get him out. But I was just a kid with a bike and $50 to my name. I needed help. I thought about Mom, but she was already fighting Tom, and I didn't want to drag her deeper into this. Instead, I texted Sarah, Ethan's cousin and the only person in his family who'd ever seemed open-minded. She'd moved to Seattle for college, far enough to be safe, but close enough to help. Can we talk? It's about Ethan, I texted. She called me within minutes. Jake, what's going on? She asked, her voice sharp with worry. Ethan's not answering my texts. My aunt said he's at some camp. I told her everything. Tom walking in, Ethan's dad, the program. Her silence on the other end was heavy, but when she spoke, her voice was steel. I know about New Horizons. It's bad, Jake. We need to get him out. She agreed to meet me in Portland that weekend, giving me time to plan. I spent hours researching, my heart racing as I read stories of kids sneaking out, of families torn apart. I found an address for New Horizons, a phone number, but calling them was useless. They'd never let me talk to Ethan. I needed a way in. Meanwhile, things at home were a tightrope. Tom was back, but he and Mom barely spoke. He avoided me, his eyes cold whenever we crossed paths. Mom tried to act normal, making dinner, asking about school, but I could see the strain in her smile. One night, she pulled me aside. "I'm working on Tom," she said. "But Jake, you need to be careful. He's struggling with this." I nodded, but my mind was on Ethan. Sarah arrived on Saturday, her car packed with snacks and a fierce determination. She was 21, with a no-nonsense attitude and a rainbow pin on her backpack that made me trust her instantly. We sat in a diner, poring over a map. New Horizons was a 3-hour drive, a compound tucked in the woods, far from prying eyes. "We can't just walk in," Sarah said, sipping her coffee. "They're strict. No visitors without approval. But I've got a friend who knows someone who used to work there. She says there's a back gate, not always locked." It was a long shot, but it was all we had. We drove that night, the road dark and winding, my stomach churning with every mile. Sarah kept the radio low, her hands steady on the wheel. "Ethan's strong," she said, more to herself than to me. "He'll hold on." When we reached the compound, it was nearly midnight. The place was eerie tall fences, floodlights, a sign proclaiming hope through faith. We parked a mile away, hidden by trees, and crept toward the back gate. Sarah was right, it was unlocked, probably forgotten. My heart pounded as we slipped inside, sticking to the shadows. The compound was quiet, just a few buildings and cabins scattered across the grounds. We found a window with a faint light, and there he was, Ethan, sitting on a cot, his head in his hands. I tapped the glass, and his eyes shot up, wide with shock. He rushed to the window, his voice a whisper. "Jake, what are you doing here?" "We're getting you out," I said, my voice trembling with adrenaline. Sarah worked on the window, prying it open with a multi-tool. Ethan hesitated, fear flashing across his face. But then he nodded, climbing through. We ran, the three of us, back to the gate, back to the car, not stopping until we were miles away. In the car, Ethan broke down, tears streaming down his face. "They told me I was wrong," he said, his voice shaking. "That I could change if I tried hard enough." I held him, my own tears falling, as Sarah drove us back to Portland. We were safe, for now, but I knew this was only the beginning. We crashed at Sarah's friend's apartment in Portland, a cramped studio with a pull-out couch and a cat that kept staring at us. Ethan was quiet, his eyes hollow, his hands still shaking from the escape. I wanted to hold him, to promise everything would be okay. But the weight of what we'd done and what was coming kept me silent. Sarah made coffee, her voice low as she outlined our next steps. "Ethan, you can't go home," she said. "Not yet. My parents will lose it. And your dad, he'll send you back." Ethan nodded, staring at the floor. "I know," he said, his voice barely audible. "But where do I go? I have nothing." "You have us," I said, reaching for his hand. This time, he didn't pull away, but his grip was weak, like he was afraid to hold on too tight. Sarah's friend, Mia, offered to let Ethan stay for a few days while we figured things out. She was a social worker, used to helping kids in tough spots, and she knew people who could help: lawyers, shelters, organizations for queer youth. But every option felt like a risk. Ethan was 19, legally an adult, but his parents could still make his life hell. And mine wasn't much better. Back home, I faced Mom and Tom. Mom was furious when I told her where I'd been, not because I'd gone, but because I hadn't told her. "Jake, you could have been hurt," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't get to run off like that." Ethan was in trouble, I said. I had to help him. "Tom," standing in the doorway, didn't say a word, but his silence was loud enough. Mom turned to him, her eyes blazing. "This is your fault," she said. "You pushed him to this, Tom. You made him feel like he had to hide." Tom's face reddened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he walked out, the front door slamming behind him. Mom sighed, rubbing her temples. "I'm trying, Jake," she said. "But this is hard for him. He grew up in a different world." I wanted to believe her, to think Tom could change, but his ultimatum still echoed in my mind. I told her about Ethan, about the program, about our escape. Her face softened, and she hugged me tight. "We'll help him," she said. "I promise." Over the next few days, we built a plan. Mia connected us with a local LGBTQ center that offered temporary housing and counseling. Ethan moved into a small apartment with other queer kids, a safe space where he could breathe. I visited every day, bringing him clothes, books, anything to make it feel like home. But he was different, quieter, more guarded, like part of him was still back in that camp. One night, we sat on the apartment's tiny balcony, the city lights twinkling below. "I keep hearing their voices," Ethan said, his knees pulled to his chest, "telling me I'm wrong, that I'm damned." "You're not," I said fiercely, taking his hand. "You're you, Ethan. And that's enough." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine, and for the first time in days, he smelled a small, fragile thing, but it was there. We kissed, soft and tentative, and for a moment, the world felt right again. But reality came crashing back. Ethan's parents were looking for him, calling Sarah, showing up at her college. We had to be careful, always watching our backs. And at home, Tom was a ticking time bomb. He and Mom argued constantly, their voices carrying through the walls. One night, I overheard him say, "If he stays like this, Ellen, I can't stay." My heart sank. Mom was fighting for me, but at what cost? I didn't want to break her marriage, but I couldn't change who I was. I felt torn, caught between my love for Ethan and my love for my family. Then Ethan got a call from his dad. "He wants to meet," Ethan told me, his voice shaking. "He says he just wants to talk, but I don't trust him." "Don't go alone," I said. "I'll come with you." He nodded, and we set a time in Placia Public Park, neutral ground. But as the day approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. The park was crowded that Sunday afternoon, families picnicking, kids chasing frisbees, the air thick with the smell of grilled hot dogs. Ethan and I sat on a bench near the entrance, his knee bouncing nervously, my hand resting on his to steady him. His dad, Pastor John, was late, and every passing minute made Ethan's face tighter, his eyes scanning the crowd. When John finally appeared, he was alone, his face grim under his gray baseball cap. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that made people step aside. Ethan stood, his hands shoved in his pockets, and I followed, my heart pounding. "Ethan," John said, his voice calm but heavy. "We need to talk. Alone." Ethan glanced at me, his eyes pleading. "Jake's staying," he said, his voice steadier than I expected. John's jaw tightened, but he nodded, sitting on the bench across from us. "I know you ran away," John said, his eyes fixed on Ethan. "I know you think you're different. But son, this isn't you. It's confusion, a phase. We can help you." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "It's not a phase, Dad. This is who I am. I love Jake." The words hung in the air, bold and raw. I felt a rush of pride, but also fear. John's face darkened, his eyes flicking to me with something close to disgust. You, he said, pointing at me. You're the one leading him down this path. No, Ethan snapped, stepping in front of me. Jake's the only one who's been there for me. You sent me to that place, Dad. They told me I was broken, that I'd burn for this. But I'm not broken. John stood, towering over us, his voice rising. You're my son, Ethan. I won't let you throw your life away for this sin. People were starting to stare, their murmurs a low hum. I grabbed Ethan's arm, ready to pull him away, but he stood his ground. I'm not your property, he said, tears in his eyes. I'm done letting you control me. John's face twisted, and for a moment, I thought he might hit Ethan. But he just turned and walked away, his shoulders rigid, leaving us in the middle of the park, the weight of his words lingering. Ethan collapsed onto the bench, his face in his hands. I sat beside him, my arm around his shoulders, not caring who saw. You were amazing, I whispered. I'm so proud of you. He looked up, his eyes red but fierce. I meant it, Jake. I love you. I'm not going back. We went back to the apartment, and for the first time in weeks, Ethan seemed lighter, like he'd shed a weight he'd been carrying for years. But I knew it wasn't over. John wouldn't give up, and Tom was still a problem at home. That night, I came home to find Mom and Tom in the living room, their faces serious. Jake, sit down, Mom said, her voice soft but firm. We've been talking. Tom looked at me, his eyes tired, not angry. I was wrong, he said, the words sounding like they hurt to say. I don't understand this, Jake. I don't know if I ever will. But your mom's right. You're her son, and this is your home. I stared at him, stunned. Was this an apology? A truce? Mom reached for my hand, squeezing it. We're a family, she said. We'll work through this together. I wanted to believe them, but doubt lingered. Tom's change of heart felt too sudden, too fragile. And Ethan's dad was still out there, a threat we couldn't ignore. But for the first time, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe we could build something new, something better. The next day, Ethan and I met at the LGBTQ center, where Mia had connected us with a lawyer. She was optimistic Ethan was an adult, and his parents couldn't force him back. But they could make things difficult, especially if they cut him off financially. We started looking for jobs, apartments, anything to give Ethan a fresh start. As we sat in the center's common room, surrounded by other kids like us, I looked at Ethan, his smile small but real. We're going to be okay, I said, and for the first time, I believed it. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. Ethan got a job at a coffee shop, his smile returning with every shift, every tip he earned. I started community college, juggling classes and a part-time gig at a bookstore, saving every penny for a future we could build together. Mom and Tom were trying awkwardly, sometimes painfully but trying. Tom started asking questions, small ones, about Ethan, about me. It wasn't acceptance. Not yet, but it was a start. Ethan's parents were another story. They cut contact, refusing to acknowledge him unless he repented. It hurt him. I could see it in the way his eyes dimmed when he talked about his mom, but he was finding his strength. The LGBTQ center became our second home, a place where we weren't just tolerated but celebrated. We made friends, kids who'd been through their own battles, who understood the scars we carried. One spring evening, Ethan and I walked along the river, the same spot where we'd hidden so many times before. The air was cool, the sky streaked with pink and gold. He stopped, turning to me, his eyes bright. I used to think love was something I'd have to hide forever, he said. But you changed that, Jake. You made me believe I could be me. I kissed him, right there in the open, not caring who saw. You did the same for me, I said. We're free now. And we were. Not perfect, not easy, but free. Tom's reaction that night, the one that had haunted me, was fading, replaced by new memories, Ethan laughing over burnt pancakes in our tiny apartment, Mom hugging us both at Thanksgiving, the world slowly opening up to us. We weren't naive. We knew there'd be more fights, more judgment, more days when the world felt too heavy. But we had each other, and that was enough. As we stood by the river, hand in hand, I realized that the haunting wasn't Tom's anger, it was the fear I'd carried, the fear of losing who I was. And I wasn't afraid anymore. Our love, once hidden in shadows, was shining now, bright and unapologetic. We'd fought for it, bled for it, and we'd won. Not just for us, but for every kid like us, searching for a place to belong. And as the sun set, painting the water gold, I knew we'd keep fighting, together, for as long as it took.